Okay. So hello again. Just to make sure you're in the right room. Does it share there? Yes. TVET data for evidence-based policy making and decision taking. Very happy to see so many people here. We had already some previous sessions talking about TVET data. Very important topic. And there's still more that can be said about that. I was a bit worried that everything has already been discussed, but there's a lot more, of course, that we can talk about when you think about data. Let me get my notes a bit organized here. So, just to start again, also I'm welcoming again the online audience, because this is the session that is streamed online. And please always remember you can post comments and questions in the chat. There's a team online that takes care of that. So why are we here? So the name of this session is TVET data for evidence-based policy making and decision taking. And we all know TVET data is an extremely important. TVET is an essential component of lifelong learning and skills development. It can contribute to many of the SDGs, SDG 4 on education, SDG 5 on gender equality, SDG 8 on decent work and economic growth, SDG 13 on climate action, but of course other SDGs are also linked to education and TVET. That's also why the UNESCO strategy for TVET emphasizes the role of TVET for equitable, sustainable, peaceful individual, social and economic development. Now for policy, and that is the purpose of this session here, we need, for policy, design, monitoring and evaluation, we need current, comprehensive and reliable data on TVET and skills development. UNESCO is the lead agency for SDG 4 on education. That means UNESCO is also responsible for monitoring of progress towards that goal. So there is an indicator framework for the monitoring of the SDGs. For UNESCO, within UNESCO, it's the UNESCO Institute for Statistics that is responsible for the statistical development, for data collection, and for dissemination. But the problem is that in the indicator framework, there is only one indicator that is really linked to TVET, and that is, if you care to know the number, SDG indicator 4.3.3. It's called the participation rate in technical vocational programs of 15 to 24-year-olds. So it's one indicator. It's about participation in TVET. UIS calculates that with data from different sources. So it's through its annual survey of formal education. It combines data on enrollment in training programs with data on population. And then you calculate this participation rate. The coverage for this indicator, unfortunately, is very low. If you look at the past, really, you can look at the past 10 years, it has not improved. Typically around only half of all member states have an indicator value in any given year. It looks very good in Europe and North America. Here, 9 out of 10 countries have reported data on this indicator. And the lowest coverage is in sub-Saharan Africa, where less than 1/3 of countries have reported any data since 2017. The interpretation of the indicator is also not straightforward. Again, this is participation in TVET. But compared to other indicators, there is no target value. If you think, let's say, take another indicator, which is, let's say, participation in primary education, right? The goal here is 100%. Everyone should go to school. But what is the target value for participation in TVET? It's not clear. Of course, we want some TVET, but how much is enough? How much is too much? Is 20%? Is that too low? Is that too high? It's really not clear. Another issue is that it doesn't capture everyone who is in TVET. There are a lot of people, young people, who are outside of the formal education system. And since this is an indicator calculated with data from the formal education system, all of these people are unknown. They will never be counted. There's also no distinction at tertiary level currently between participation in general and or academic education on the one hand and vocational or professional education on the other hand. So at ISCED levels 5 and up, this is also was mentioned yesterday, it's not clear how many people are really participating in something that would be considered part of TVET. The UIS is working on improving the coverage of this indicator. But for a comprehensive view of TVET, we have to look beyond this indicator. As we already discussed yesterday, this is one of the goals of the work that OECD is doing with its global data report. Do a comprehensive inventory of TVET data, examine the coverage, compile all of that. And the issue of TVET data coverage was also discussed in 2024 at the first ever international conference on education data and statistics organized by UNESCO, and will continue to be on the agenda. So today we continue this conversation. We have two presentations coming up. First, we will hear from Iván Bornacelly from the OECD Center for Skills, who you already saw yesterday. He will talk about a skills strategy for Latin America. And then we will hear from my colleague Claudia Pompa from UNESCO headquarters, who is in the youth section of youth literacy and skills development, and she will present the UNESCO Global Skills Tracker. Each of the presenters have about 25 minutes, and then we'll go to discussion with the audience. So Iván, I invite you to the stage for your presentation.
Thank you, Friedrich. Good morning, everyone, once again. So let me start right away to present this project that is part of the initiative that we are leading from the OECD side on focus on more regional perspective of the use, promotion of data for policy making and supporting the decision-making process in the region. In this session, we will explore how robust TVET data can underpin evidence-based decision-making and promote more effective policies. It will build on the project towards a skill strategy for Latin American region, and we are going to draw on the OECD experience in supporting countries to design and implement skill strategies. I will briefly outline the presentation. First, I will show the importance of the skill strategies. What are the skill strategies about? Then I'm going to focus in on the regional skill strategy for Latin America. Then I will explain a little bit of the methodology and data that we plan to use in this project. And finally, 9 lessons that we have learned so far through the implementation of a skill strategy in more focus on the Euro region. So why a skill strategy for Latin America? So typically, the OECD defines a skill strategy as a country main strategic policy document focused mainly on skills. And it's not one that sets the overall directions that skills should take for policy, but it's a tool that involves and intertwine skills priorities across different domains and offers a comprehensive view of a skills system. In simple terms, skill strategies help countries in 2 ways. The first one is by offering a coordinated and inclusive approach for skill policy. This means making everyone that participates in the skill process pulling in the same direction, highlighting a goal and bringing everyone to pursue that goal. Second, by providing a strategic policy direction for the medium and long term. At the OECD Center for Skills, we have supported more than 27 countries in economies since 2013 in developing these national and regional skills strategies. So you might be asking, what are the main benefits of bringing and implementing these skill strategies? The first one is, as mentioned before from some of the people that have participated in the discussion, is breaking down policy silos by providing coordination across ministries and agencies that deal with the skill development. That's the first one. The second is elevating skills as a policy topic so that skills it becomes a priority in national agencies and budget decision. Second, creating a shared language around the skills that helps policymakers, employers, and education providers understand each other in a better way. And finally, fostering commitment action towards developing skills by bringing stakeholders across governments, social partners, industry to strengthen the national skills system. We have already done similar work for South Asia, and now we're moving forward with the development of the Latin American version of the skill strategy. The goal is to support the region taking concrete steps in a comprehensive regional skill strategy that it will put skills and, more specifically, vocational education and training as a part of the policy agenda of each country, but also in the region. The project has two main components. The first one is to carry out a high-level assessment that will give us a better understanding how skills systems are performing across Latin American economies, with a particular focus on TVET. And this analysis will include all countries in the region that have data available for the analysis. And second, we'll develop regionally relevant recommendations based on the analysis that we conduct that can help to enhance the performance of the skills systems that involve strengthening the quality, the relevance, and outcomes of VET provision. So what are the main goals that are included in these projects? Well, the Towards Skills strategy in Latin America is really about promising a more coordinated and inclusive approach for skill policy and TVET policy across the region. We plan to use the OECD skill strategy framework, where we'll be able to spot the challenges but also the opportunities that can guide the efforts that the region has been already putting in place for a more medium and long-term scope. A big part of this work is also about strengthening the collaboration and peer learning between the countries, and this is one of the main features that this skill strategy brings, is to really try to bring the main stakeholders that are promoting or part of the development of the skills policies to learn from others' experiences in implementing similar initiative. And in the end, this project will be based on a very strategic, it will become a strategic resource for policymakers and stakeholders, highlighting the importance of bringing also best practices and international benchmarking to compare what is done in the region in comparison to other countries. So the use of TVET labor market data is key for this project, especially for evidence-based policy design and decision-making. So that will help us to understand how skills systems are performing, their strengths, the weaknesses, and the actions where the actions are needed. As a key component of this type of project is the combination of quantitative and qualitative data on the supply and demand side. On the supply side, we use OECD sources like PISA, the Survey of Adult Skills, also known as PIAC, the Education at a Glance, along with the regional and more national data resources that include TVET statistics. To capture more the skill demand side, we draw on big data from online job postings to understand what are the competences and skills that are demanded in the labor market. Also, we look at ILO information for Latin America and CEPAL, which is an important center for gathering information that it can give us insights already on how the system are structured and more information on participation and enrollment in TVET. And finally, we relied a lot on a stakeholders consultation that will help us to not only provide insights on the analysis that we conduct, but also to put in perspective the data and the analysis that we do and align it to the needs of the countries, but also in this case, the region. One of the main goals of this project is to set priority for skills and TVET in Latin America. To do that, we usually use the OECD strategy dashboard, which give a general overview on how countries perform across areas and skill system. Here you can see the dashboard for Latin American countries, for selected Latin American countries in 2021, which it will be clearly updated for the purpose of this project. And looking at this dashboard, generally, we can see is that there is a mixed picture across Latin America with a strong variation between countries. Some countries performing well compared to others. The dashboard is divided in two parts. Let me just highlight these elements. First, the first part is focusing on indicators that give us a sense of what are how the skills have been developed in terms of relevancy. And the second part is more on the use of skills in an effective way. So this dashboard generally use information from household surveys, PISA indicators. It also use EUIS information that is available for this country. And for those that you see an X, is that information is not available, which highlight how, which it's an opportunity to highlight that the region still face very limited information to provide evidence-based policy. And as I discussed with colleagues here from Ecuador, the lack of information is a key issue to be able to build on and to design policies in the skill area. So for a few countries, going back to the dashboard, for a few countries where we see youth skills are improving, but progress in the region is very uneven, especially when it comes to inclusiveness. And adult learning and workplace training remain very limited. Few firms offer formal training opportunities, and education attainment, even though that education attainment is rising, there are equity challenges that persist. This gives us already a sense of where the policy, what are the policy areas that this Latin American strategy should focus on, and the purpose of this project is to dig deeper and find common grounds and common challenges to provide common recommendations for the region. Finally, the project will include quantitative assessment and stakeholder engagement to understand better and address key challenges. We'll work to promote the importance of good data on skills and VET. The idea is to help policymakers to see the importance of reliable information for planning and evaluation. We also highlight data gaps. This is not only as part of the TVET data report, global report that we have explained yesterday, but is a huge component for this skill strategy to identify where the data gaps are and how we can address them. We see that, especially in the region, information about skill supply, demand, and outcomes are extremely scarce. Another focus is to improve how data are collected and used. by reviewing existing surveys and systems, helping policymakers, educators, and guidance professionals to make better use of this information already available. And finally, the objective is to foster regional collaboration. That's another key component, is encouraging countries to share methods, align definitions, so data are more compatible across Latin America. I think the work that we can do here, and I'm gonna just, maybe this is an opportunity also to work closely with Sinterfor to identify what they have done on this regard, so that we can provide recommendations and build on what other organizations have done. One main component of this project is also the leveraging the OECD's rich collection of international best practices that has been generating throughout the OECD long-standing international collaboration with a wide selection of countries, including several in Latin America. For example, in our project in Mexico, in Tlaxcala more specifically, from 2021, we provide around 30 examples for international best practices in various areas, and we facilitate the interaction and the communication between those that they were behind in developing this innovative approach to solve key issues with the government of Tlaxcala in Mexico. And here, just to give you a couple of examples of the type of best practices that we identify, they tend to come just a box, but behind that there is a lot of work of coordination and highlighting and putting in contact with partners so they can have access to the people that are behind this initiative. So I want to now to summarize the lesson learned from skill strategies, from skill strategy in the European Union. Early this year, we conduct we released the report. In this report, we provide lessons from over a decade of work on a skill strategy in European countries, gathering experience with national skills strategies. It draws on the insight of 26 countries, including 14 that OECD has directly supported in developing and implementing their strategies. This actually it was the first comprehensive effort to map what makes a skill strategy effective, or what countries have learned along the way. The aim is to help policymakers to better understand what really works, provide practical guidance, and developing and updating their own strategies. For some of the countries that they have been involved at a very early stage of this process, this was an opportunity to reassess their skill strategy and maybe translate it into more updated version of what they have done. And in total, the report identified 9 key lessons that I would like to share with you that define what makes a skill strategy a successful one. So the lessons come from a very extensive work. Let me start with having the importance of having a clear objective and the right timing. And when we say the right timing, it's also like the government willingness to embrace what is coming outside, what is coming from the results of this strategy. It should align with national priorities and be grounded in solid data and evidence base. The success also depends on strong champions and who can keep momentum, and it also depends on a whole government approach. As I mentioned, the skill strategy is built on collaboration between all the ministries that are involved in the provision of skills. It doesn't matter if it's a Ministry of Education, if it's focused on a Ministry of Labor. It's integrated work, but it's also relying on a strong champion, on a strong agency, institution that want to take the lead on this. Also, Engaging stakeholders across the sectors helps build ownership and relevance. And finally, it's vital to have clear implementation plan. So there are the well definition of the roles, regular monitoring to keep things on track, and adjust when it's needed. I would like to highlight, for the purpose of this, the focus of this session, since it's very focused on the importance of the use of data and specifically TVET data, I'd like to spend a moment on the lesson 4, building the strategy on a strong evidence base. This lesson highlights what makes an evidence-based assessment effective in a skill system. First, it needs to be very comprehensive, looking at a very wide range of skills and using both quantitative on one side, but also qualitative data to avoid the failure of the strategy itself. It also needs to be data-driven, which will help countries to understand the real changes and developing using people skills effectively. And ultimately, this evidence helps define the scope of the strategy, identifying specifically which education levels it needs to be focused on, which population groups need to be targeted, what are the policy levers that need to be given or have the greatest potential to improve outcomes. So what are the next steps for the skill strategy? And I would like to finish with this. So just to give you a better understanding of how this project looks like, the project will deliver several key activities and outputs. We'll start with a kickoff meeting happening early 2026. Which will bring together all the government officials, social partners, and education providers, and all the stakeholders that are part of the skill system across the region. And the key point from the key purpose of this kickoff meeting is to raise awareness about the skill strategy, build engagement, and set up already the foundations of the project work. Then we'll move into more the analytical phase using the international data that is available and all the good practices and research insights to inform our findings. And at the heart of the project, the report will provide an evidence-based overview of what the regional skill strategy could look like. And the idea is to launch the report in the late 2026 through a virtual event, so not only people from Latin America can get access to the main results, but also beyond the region, where we'll share the key findings and continue the dialogue around the topic. So with this, I would like to finalize my presentation, so thank you so much. If you have any question, I'm very happy to provide some answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Iván. Thank you for this comprehensive overview of your work. And also, thank you for staying within the 25 minutes that were allocated to you. I want to come back to one point that you talked about. This is the overall aims of the project. And I want to mention them again. It's a coordinated, inclusive approach for skills and VET policy in the region. You mentioned number second, identification of common challenges and opportunities. Third, strengthening collaboration, exchanges, and peer learning between countries in the region. And fourth, securing a more prominent position for skills and VET on the policy agenda. And I mention that because these are exactly the goals of our initiative here towards a global TVET agenda. And I think there will be important lessons to be learned from the work that you're doing in Latin America. You also mentioned, and this is now the link to the next presentation, among the data sources that you plan to look at, online job postings as one possible source of information on TVET and skills, specifically skills demand. And this is where my colleague Claudia Pompa now comes in. Can I just check, Claudia, are you there?
Hi, Friedrich, I'm here.
Okay, very good. Thank you for joining us from Paris. Claudia will now introduce the Global Skills Tracker, which was just recently launched and which is available on the UNEVOC website. Claudia, over to you, and you also have 25 minutes.
Thank you, Friedrich, very much, and I hope everybody can see the screen clearly. As Friedrich mentioned, my name is Claudia Pompa. I'm a program specialist with the Youth Literacy and Skills team with UNESCO headquarters. And very recently, we were able to launch the Global Skills Tracker on World Youth Skills Day, which is a tool developed jointly with our partner, Lycas, is a private sector company that helps assess skills demands across the world. Let me see if the technology guys are with me. Yes, here. So what is the Global Skills Tracker? So the Global Skills Tracker is a tool that helps us explore skills data across various dimensions, including countries, industries, and occupations. And as Friedrich mentioned previously, it's housed under UNESCO-UNEVOC because it helps complement other tools that UNEVOC has at the moment, creating an ecosystem of tools for TVET. The Global Skills Tracker provides a series of advantages. One is a high-level mapping in terms of data at a macro level. It also helps understand trends and the dynamics of the labor markets at a local and regional level and provide insights about what skills are being in demand, and to a certain extent also have some foresight in terms of what are the skills that are growing in demand, what are the skills that are increasing from the labor market, but also from the private sector, etc. So as you know, what we do is we aggregate online job postings and analyze them based on a series of criteria, such as, you know, the type of position, the skills they need, education requirements, competencies or skills that are required, etc. So what we're really trying to do here is assess the types of skills required and also try to bring some level of clarity in the fruit salad of online job postings, applying taxonomies to the analysis so that we can then have a better understanding of what's happening at a local or regional level. The great thing about the Global Skills Tracker is that it provides information not only at the national level, but also the subnational level. This is broadly why we're doing it, because of, you know, we need to have access to data that is more frequent, that is more timely, data that is granular, but also data that is cheaper to collect and cheaper to have access to. And that is one of the reasons why we developed the tracker. Of course, as part of this, we're not saying under any circumstances that statistical data is not important. To the very contrary, what we aim with the Global Skills Tracker is actually to complement statistical sources of data, or what we like to call the more static sources of data with more dynamic sources of data. So as part of the Global Skills Tracker, we have also added a dashboard, what we call Dashboard 0, which includes statistical data from the countries we cover at the moment and that we source from our development partners, such as, of course, UIS, but also the ILO, the World Bank, etc., so that we can help benchmark the data that we have access to from online job ads with a statistical data level. The Global Skills Tracker currently runs in 10 countries. These are the 10 countries or geographies that we're covering at the moment. Here, the outlier really is the US. And in the US, we're covering one state, which is Idaho. And it's a very fair question if you're asking why Idaho. We selected Idaho because we think it's a good benchmark for a highly developed agricultural economy, which can help us understand some of the skills and trends that are happening within that economy and that we can hope to see reflected in other countries in due time. The other countries were selected based on our projects. Basically, UNESCO is running projects in all of these countries, and that would help us ensure uptake and use of the tool, because this is a tool that we're not developing just for the sake of it, but that we really want training institutes, policymakers, students to have access and use so that they can understand the landscape of what the skills are being required at the moment. And the best way to do that for us is to start in places where we already have projects. We have some great news, and we are going to add 10 more countries in Africa before the end of the year. And we are hoping to increase our coverage in different ways. So we're also presenting the tool in Asia next month so that we can help gain also some traction in Asia and hopefully add more countries. And that's the way that we can hope to increase coverage and also create awareness about the tool and its uses. We also like to call the Global Skills Tracker, perhaps not very fairly, but I like to call it an AI tool for AI, because the Global Skills Tracker also has a focus on certain specific skills, such as digital skills, green skills, and also AI skills. So it's an AI-enabled tool that will help us also forecast and better understand the demand for AI skills. But more specifically, the Global Skills Tracker can help every one of us in different ways, with sharing real-time information about labor markets, consolidating that data on skills demand. It can help guide program and policy development, but also monitor and analyze skills over time. With our partners, like us, we foresee that we will start synchronizing the Global Skills Tracker every quarter, so it will give us more and better data over time, and continue our analysis of what's happening in the digital AI and green skills sector. So this is a snapshot of what the Global Skills Tracker looks like. In the labor market indicators section, this is where we present our statistical data. Then we analyze the online job ads data by country, by occupation, and by sector. We can also analyze the data by green skills, digital skills, or AI skills demand. And we have a comparison tool where we can understand and compare what's happening between countries and gain some skills insights. Because our coverage is still quite limited, this is just not a pilot phase, but phase 1 with 10 countries. The comparison is still at country versus country, but we hope that as we increase coverage, this can become between regions so that we can better understand similarities and differences in labor markets across regions and see how policy and interventions can be better tailored to those realities. This is just to give you a quick flavor of what you can find in the Global Skills Tracker. This is a dashboard that is developed for AI, and this is the dashboard where you can see skills in terms of green. And we also analyze what we call AI-ness or greenness and AI pervasiveness or green pervasiveness, which is the amount of skills that are green skills or AI skills specific within a certain number of online job ads. So this is the kind of information that you get from the Global Skills Tracker. It's very visual, and it's a tool where you can do a lot if you allow yourself the time to play with it and really understand how it works. The other beauty of the Global Skills Tracker is that it's in 2 languages, English and French. So far, we also have a lot of support documents or support material, support tools available. One is the user manual, which takes you by the hand in order to help you understand how to use the tool and how to extract the best level of data that you can. And it also provides a methodological note where we are very specific and very clear about what's our methodology, how do we collect data at the local level, how do we aggregate, how do we analyze that, how we deduplicate, what are the taxonomies that we're using for what occupations and sectors. And we provide all of that information because we really believe in an open and transparent process that shows the user how the data was collected and is being utilized. At the moment, we're also working with LICAS on an assessment guideline, which basically it's a tool that will help governments or policymakers to conduct a self-assessment about the level of digital readiness of their own labor markets. And based on that, assess what kind of tools they need to use in order to analyze that labor market. If you go to the Global Skills Tracker, you will see that in places like the Philippines or Malaysia, we have more than 1 million online job ads at the moment, which means there is a very robust labor market in terms of online and digital penetration, and there is a lot we can do with that. In other countries, perhaps in Ghana or in Cote d'Ivoire, the level of digital penetration is still not as deep yet. And therefore, the Global Skills Tracker should be used as a tool in the toolkit, along with other sources of data, to better understand what's happening at the local level and provide the analysis of the skills that we need. And with that, I would like you to take out your phones if you're in the room and scan the QR code, which will take you directly to the Global Skills Tracker. And then we can perhaps use the few minutes that we have left to really explore the tracker together and understand how it works. And one of the first questions that I have is, what do the top green skills can tell us about the sector? We also have a question about the craft sector in Malaysia. And then if you want to share any surprising facts from your explorations. I will stop this presentation and move to the Global Skills Tracker so that we can explore it together. One second.
You managed to open?
If you manage to open the QR code, it will lead you to this place, which is the home of the Global Skills Tracker in the UNEVOC website. And as I mentioned, we see ourselves as a part of an ecosystem of tools provided by UNEVOC, including the TVET profiles, other sources of data they have, and the many publications so that you can better understand the skills landscape in this context. If you go to Skills Insights, if we go to Green Skills and we click there, it will show you this graph. It will show you the level of greenness and level of green pervasiveness. And if you're very worried about what this jargon means, then you can go to the information section, which provides a detailed explanation of how we define this and also the taxonomy that we're using to analyze this section. And here on the top 50 green skills, you can see some insights already that were quite surprising for me, because in the world of TVET, we talk a lot about green skills, but the conversation, for example, about waste management is not something that comes up very commonly. I think a lot of us have talked in green skills related to energy, renewables, and other types of sources of energy, and how do we do that? But very seldom we talk about waste management. And when we were doing our research on this, I started playing, because this is an aggregation of all the countries. But then you can also select specific countries if you want to look at some of them. And so, for example, if you go to Jordan, you will see that waste management still comes up very strongly. Top 50 green skills. If we go to Nigeria, again, we find waste management. And it got me thinking that, what are we doing to upgrade our curricula on this sector, and how well do we know what is it that we need in terms of waste management? It makes a lot of sense as countries and cities keep urbanizing and cities keep expanding, that waste management is such a main need across different geographies, but perhaps something that we don't really talk about in TVET and that we should be thinking about it more, but something that the private sector, it's really seen as something important for them. And if you hover over it, you will also find a description on how we define the skill and how many online job advertisements in that country are related to waste management. Another very interesting finding that we had on green is the issue of environmental law. That also is proving to be global. Again, this is for Nigeria, but if we go for all countries, environmental law shows up again as one of the top green skills. And we spend a lot of time theorizing why environmental laws, and also why the issue of ISO 14000 were showing up so prominently in this analysis. And actually, when we were reviewing a report on greening that's getting ready for publication during COP, it seemed to have to indicate something that we were also theorizing about, which is that green skills are actually becoming not sectoral specific anymore, but cross-cutting across. So cross-cutting, obviously, across different sectors and occupations, which means that increasingly companies need to understand the standards and the regulatory environments in which they operate in order to remain compliant with green requirements. And that's why there is an increase in skills related to environmental law, but also related to ISO 14000. The other question that I pose for you is that what can you tell me in terms of digital skills? So I go again all the way up and I go to digital skills, and I purposely chose digital skills and no AI skills because AI is still a very new sector. It's already seen a lot of reflections on this front, but I wanted to use digital because it's broader and more encompassing. So if you see the level of digital pervasiveness across is already very high. But personally, I'm working with the cultural and creative sectors and trying to understand their potential for job creation or income generation in the TVET sector. And I had a case study from Malaysia. So I will take Malaysia as one case, as a country, and then I can go down to the occupation group, and I wanted to understand for craft and related trade workers, what's the level of digital skills required? And very interesting insights again, right? It's perhaps less about very specific digital skills, but more about digital literacy and the fact that it's really prominent across different types of ISO codes. And then you can also do different analysis there. And I was very surprised that even handicraft workers have such a high level of digital pervasiveness in terms of requirements. Meaning that even if you're a handicraft worker or if you work with wood or some more traditional requirements that we would expect perhaps less digital skills presence, they're still very much prominent there. And then I just wanted to show you two things before finishing, which is the country analysis that you can do. So this is what the global dashboard looks like. And again, you can go by country. Let's take Ghana in this case, and it shows you the level of occupations. But this is what I mean that we show you data not only at the national level, but also the subnational level, which makes it very interesting because, of course, we would expect a lot of these online job advertisements to be clustered around Accra, the capital, but we're not only collecting data from Accra. We only know that in Ashanti region, how many job openings, online job openings or job ads there are in the Eastern region and other regions, even in Volta, Bono East region, etc. We know that for each of these openings or regions, at what level they are. Is it professional? Is it managers, technicians? And the ISCO level that you can also find out. And lastly, and I know that I'm going very fast because this is a lot of information to process, but you can also do a comparison where you can compare for now countries, forthcoming, you will be able to compare perhaps you will be able to compare regions once we add more countries. Let's do Kenya. So we can understand even like that, you know, discrepancies, what it's most in demand, at what level, in what sector of the economy, and by what level of occupation. So this gives you a very segregated level of data that could be used in multiple ways, could be used to influence policy, could be used to update curricula, etc. And I think that the added value really of the Global Skills Tracker is that we know a lot of other organizations and agencies are working with online job data, but this is the first time that this data is open, and it's open for everyone anywhere in the world who wants to access this. This is not put beyond some kind of a database where you need to register. There are no logins or passwords. Anyone can access and analyze the data. And I just want to leave saying that we hope that you play with this tool, play with it a lot so that you can understand it. Please help us spread the word about it and use it, and let us know how we can improve it, because this is a very much alive and dynamic tool that we hope we can continue to improve over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you for this very good demo of what can be done with non-traditional sources of data, and also showing us that the online job postings in particular are a very rich source of data that can provide real-time insights into the distribution of occupations and the demands for specific skills. So we have now about 15 minutes left for Q&A, and I want to ask Iván to join me on stage. I think I have to change microphone, yes. So Claudia, please stay with us. We have another 15 minutes for questions, and well, I'll start us off with one question for me for both of the presenters. First, starting with you, Claudia. When you talked about the data on waste management, you mentioned the issue of curricula, and I wanted to ask you how the Global Skills Tracker can help countries translate these insights from the data into curriculum and training reforms. And if I add maybe a qualification, especially in countries where there is a limited data coverage or where informal employment plays an important role.
Thank you, Friedrich. I can talk about this for hours on end, but I'll try to be very brief. On the issue of informal markets, we know that a lot of countries around the world, informal economies are sometimes larger than the formal economies. And that's why we say that the Global Skills Tracker is a tool in the toolkit to help understand the labor skills, the labor market landscape and what is happening at the local level. In some countries, what we're showing is just part of the picture. And so in those cases, we still need a statistical data. We need other types of data, surveys, and so on to really put the picture all together. But nonetheless, we're starting to see an increase of these tools across. I recently asked for a data cut on 2 countries where I was very pleasantly surprised about the kind of data that I got in South Sudan and Somalia, which we are considering as part of our next cohort of countries, and where you see online job posts, which are still limited, really playing a kind of a parallel dynamic to the conflicts that have been happening in these countries and how jobs are decreasing in line with the conflicts. So I think online job data can also give you insights into that. I think something that we also, and I mentioned before, is that we're part of an ecosystem of tools that not only UNEVOC, but also UNESCO at large is putting together out there for teachers, for policymakers on how to adopt digital technologies, but also AI technologies. So we see ourselves as part of this bigger discussion, but providing very specific insights. And every time we deploy this, so the countries that you saw there, we have been working very closely with ministries, ministries of education, ministries of labor, responsible authorities for TVET on uptake and capacity building. this tool is only as good as people use it. So we have been having workshops with them, showing them how it works, how they can use that to influence their policy making process. We're also working with TVET training centers and helping them understand how they can use the information available there to update curricula, but also to perhaps strengthen and improve their relationships with the private sector. Just think about the wealth of information that this tool has when you put it next to sectoral skills bodies, for example, and how that process can be shaped as well. I think like just taking from that, engagement with the private sector for TVET is crucial. And this information comes from the private sector that is telling us about their demands and their needs. So it's a very kind of like real-time data on how to understand what's happening on the other side and how to better adapt our curricula and our systems to that without having very lengthy processes that take sometimes years before it's reflected in curricula. And by the time it is, that train has passed already. And as I mentioned, what's really useful is that this is available for all. We're also working a lot with the academic sector, so academia, particularly in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire right now, to have access to go into the Global Skills Tracker and analyze the data that is there and provide very synthetic, short, easy to read briefs on the data that can help influence also decisions on curricula and policy. We're very excited about this. Just bear in mind that it's been less than 3 months since we launched. We have a lot of other exciting projects coming up. We want to add videos. We're thinking about, how to embed self-assessment and training. We have been playing around with ideas of a chatbot that can be embedded within the system and provide answers based on the data that is there. So it's exciting, but also I think it's a very specific, tangible tool that can help policymakers see it in a very visual and graphic way, and training centers to have access to real-time data to help influence their training and curricula updates.
Thank you, Claudia. Related question to you, Iván. The one reason why we are so concerned about data is because we want to make sure that policymakers and other base their decisions on evidence. So when you look at ministries and training providers, other institutions, employers, how do you make sure that decisions are in fact driven by data and evidence? What kind of governance or institutional arrangements are needed? And I would like you to respond to that question by looking at the entire TVET data landscape.
Well, I think that's a very important question, and before answering, I would like to say, Claudia, that it's a great job that has been done with the skill tracker. We would like to follow up and understand better how the project has been implemented. But to answer specifically your question, Friedrich, I would like to say that effective use of data requires a strong coordination from different stakeholders. Let's say one practical approach could be the developing of a council, a cross-ministerial council that is focused on skills or TVET that can integrate and can facilitate the mandate of analyzing, understanding, putting together the information that is available. That mandate needs to be cleared. It needs to be aligned to the specific purpose of what the data is going to be used for. It needs to have guidance. It needs to have an objective, and that will help us. That will help specifically these institution who got that mandate to follow up and build on that. I would like to mention an example. For instance, we had the opportunity to work together very closely with the UK Cybersecurity Council. It was specifically on cybersecurity skills, and this institution was the one that centralized the role of managing the coordination between the different stakeholders, not only to identifying what are the main goals of the specific skill policy that need to be put in place, but also to gather the information and then align with those that they were in charge of analyzing the information to provide insights with a very specific focus, which was the cybersecurity, understanding the cybersecurity skill demand. Also, having data sharing frameworks is essential. As you can see, the information is not only coming from surveys that are systematically conducted, but also it can come as the skill tracker can come from online job posting vacancy information, administrative data, and having data sharing frameworks that can allows the information sharing, but also protecting the privacy matters, I think is key. And one important thing that we should also keep in mind is to embed analytical capacity within the ministries and entities that are in charge of making policies on this matter, but to be able also to analyze the information that is available so they can conduct analysis specifically to the issues that they are trying to address. For example, publishing dashboards on graduates that can be useful for training providers, but also for employers. And finally, I would like to say that data only matters if it changes behavior. So these feedback loops are crucial to get feedback back on the use of the information. Is information still relevant? If it's not relevant, what it can be done to be more updated? And this feedback is key to continue the ball rolling and make changes in terms of the use of the information.
Thank you. Let's go to the audience here. Are there any questions? Please raise your hand. And I think we have microphones that go around. Oh, yeah, Natalie has a microphone. Pariona was first.
I'm the older. Thank you, Claudia, and also Iván, for sharing. I think this is a big accomplishment because I think data and statistics in TVET, I think, is very necessary and important. Looking at TVET at this moment, that has to be very agile and responsive. And I know that providing live data is not easy, let alone talking about forecasting. So that in terms of curriculum, we're not always playing catch up, but also we can lead. But that's, I think, is the idea. But I think this we can continue based on what you have been doing. I think we can continue improving so that at the end we can, use the data more, basically more effectively. So now my maybe a little bit of detailed questions. First to Claudia, because this is online, and I know when online job market normally in terms of job requirements, there are some, but I think in terms of descriptions tend to be very generic. The details, maybe they won't really describe it there. Maybe they will be done through interview, through demonstrations. So how could this, in a way, can be addressed in the future so that at the end, when it comes to the competencies, we can get more detailed information about the competency in certain occupations? And a second one, I think, is about very general, because I think when we look at job openings, we need to look at the time frames. And in your database, I haven't really checked whether you put when the data start being collected and when it's ended, or is it kind of live that at the end, whatever changes in the job market will automatically be updated in the website. I think I just want to get that kind of explanation so that when we use it, we also have some kind of explanations to the policymakers that, we use these data trackers based on the data collection from this period to that period. Yeah. And also, if you do that, how frequency are you doing it? Are you doing this like annually or, I don't know, biannually, something like that in terms of that? And the other one is, I'm from Southeast Asia, from ASEAN, and as you know that ASEAN with 11 countries, they're diverse. You already mentioned Philippines and Malaysia to be part of this study. But a lot of other countries, I think Singapore, I think is easy also for you to include, but some other countries where a lot of traditional jobs, maybe considered as non-formal job, that many of them job occupancy is not marketed through online job market. So how would you kind of encourage or give recommendations to the policymakers in the country so that at the end the habit or the culture of publishing job online will be improved in the future? Yeah. So that is on Claudia. And then for Iván, I think, again, thank you. And you are, this is more on the static data, but also very important to combine the static and dynamic. And on the static, I think you share all of the resources that you have done. And I know the challenge, especially in the developing countries, getting the data is very challenging. And even that, the accuracy of the data, the frequency of collecting data also an issue. So looking into the TVET, again, has to be very responsive and agile. And if we just rely on the past data that maybe most of the time is lacking, how could you integrate some kind of future or forecasting data so that maybe you can integrate, for example, like foreign direct investments, government initiatives, so that from the static and some of the current initiative of policy, at the end you can combine those so that in terms of looking in the demand side, we're not only looking at the past data, but also maybe current and also future. Just asking that. Thank you very much.
So before you respond, can I please ask you, so, okay, by the way, with your permission, I think we can add a few minutes. Can I check, do we have 90 minutes again for lunch today? No, 1 hour. 1 hour, okay, so maybe we take 5 more minutes. But both of the panelists, can you please maybe just pick one question and try to respond briefly so we can have another 1 or 2 questions here from the audience. Claudia, we can start with you.
Great, thank you. Just in a minute. So we know that for some parts of the online job ads, they can be quite generic, but other parts are very specific. So we, for example, it's very hard to get data on salaries, but when you look at competencies, they are quite descriptive. So that's why we try to analyze. And again, you can go to the methodological note and see how we analyze it. In terms of the job openings, we started publishing data from 2024. And the data that we have until now, it's bi-yearly, but starting this December, we will start doing it quarterly to have better data panel, but also live data. So what you see on the tracker reflects what happened in the last 3 months in that labor market and the level of openings. And just a final point on ASEAN and non-traditional and non-formal sources, jobs, but also somebody asked about, do we track Facebook? We know that, for example, social media, there are these Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups that publish thousands of jobs per day across regions. But for us, because issues of GDPR and data privacy and anonymity and other factors, it's still very hard to tap into that. But we are looking at ways on how we can use proxies to analyze informal markets. And I'm particularly very interested in the dynamics between formal and informal and how those reflect skills and how they influence each other. So this is perhaps also a call for action. If anybody else is looking at this, is interested in looking at this together and analyzing some of the data, we will be very open to pursue this line of work.
Thank you. And Iván, you had a question about forecasting.
Yeah, I think if I may answer your question by saying, like, before doing any forecasting, I think it's important to ask ourselves, what is that forecasting information for? It's better to understand what are the key questions that the data are trying to answer before jumping into any complicated information, either if the source is coming from dynamic or static information. Is key to understand the context. Having that in mind, it's important that rather than gathering more information, understand the status quo of the information that the country has available. So we can start having more as an approach to use the information more effectively, the information that is available. That includes administrative data, that includes surveys that I have already conducted, and then see if with that information we can elaborate and work on key indicators that can answer those questions. Because for forecasting itself, it's very important first to gather a good source of information, and that requires time, that requires a lot of effort. So I'm giving you just a pragmatic answer to your question, and something that it can be relevant in the global South context.
Let's see someone. Okay, there's a right there. Please introduce yourself also, and so that the audience can also know who you are online.
On? Yeah. Hi, it's Volker Wedeken from the University of Nottingham. I had lots of questions, but I'll just ask one, really, and picking up on the last point you were making, Iván. I think one of the challenges is this is a really complex stuff, and you were talking about policymakers needing the skills and having a sort of data analytic unit. And I guess one of the challenges with this sort of thing is what are the potential risks and the unintended consequences of this kind of data being used in a superficial way, for instance, to rank countries against each other when we know that the systems are really complex, and that sort of very simplistic ranking, for instance, might be really problematic. I'm just, I think if one reflects on what the consequences of things like TIMSS and PISA has been on the schooling system, that sometimes you have very superficial responses from policymakers to those kinds of data. So I suppose the question is, how do we make sure that the complexity of this data and the gaps in the data are acknowledged and policymakers recognize that?
Well, I think you're touching upon a very important point, and I think building capacity on the use of information, it's not necessarily focused only on being able to conduct analysis, data analysis, as a data scientist, like pull out information, summarize a statistic, and potentially rank the information. It has to put in a context. So the capacity building, it should focus only on how to properly analyze the information in a given context, how to accompany that information that you're using with qualitative analysis that can go beyond the ranking. It can go, okay, we know that there is, by certain indicators, there is one country above another, but what is behind that? That's where stakeholders' engagement, peer learning experience gain importance, and the combination of these two components, the quantitative and the qualitative factors, are key to be placed in a unit that the purpose is to analyze the information. So I think that's where the capacity building should be focused.
Thank you. We'll take one last question, and please try to be brief.
Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Emilienne Tingwe from the Renewables Academy. I have a question for Ivan. For Claudia, we can talk later. You're looking into the skills strategies. Is there any particular sector you're looking into in South America? And to piggyback on the other ones about forecasting and quantitative, I think it's also very important if we have to get this narrative into what TVET is offering so as to get the right quantity of qualified persons for the jobs that are forecasted for. Would you be looking into that within your study as well, quantifying the skills that are needed in the different countries on your focus area? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So for the first part of the question, I think we're going to allow the different stakeholders engagement that we're going to have during the process to identify what are the main sectors that requires like a closer approach. If there is a common sector that in the region seems to be relevant to look closer. So we don't have beforehand a specific focus, but I think it's also part of the process to get insight from the different conversations that we're going to have. But I have to highlight that this strategy aims to have a general approach, more on the common factors, common challenges that the region face, rather and more sector specific. But if there is a common challenge in a specific sector, I think it's worth it to include in the analysis. And about the how are we planning to forecast skills specifically for the TVET occupations, I think we haven't done that at the OECD. We're not planning to do that. I think what specifically for this project, if we identifying exercise forecasting skills needs, we would like to learn from how they are doing it and maybe accompany those initiatives happening in the region so those exercises are implemented in the most effective way. This involves like the analytical component of doing the work right, because one thing that we're trying to avoid is that forecasting skills needs end up forecasting wrongly the information, and then training providers are basing their curriculum design on information that is likely to be wrong. So we're not pushing that agenda in terms of forecasting too much because it has a lot of issues, but we're open to understand what is happening. So that's my point.
Okay. Thank you. We have now come to the end of this session. We've only to summarize that in one sentence. We know that there are many data gaps in the field of TVET. There are also many sources of data that can be explored, including new sources of data. But to make the right decisions, we have to be careful in interpreting the data correctly. So thank you again to our two panelists, Claudia, Pompa, and Iván Bornacelly. Please give them a big round of applause, and then enjoy your lunch.